Very happy to welcome Alex Kopilow. He's the Director of Media Partnerships at the New York Mets, and he's also the founder of SponCon Sports newsletter. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean. Been a fan for a long time, so glad to join the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I always ask people on the podcast how they got their start in sports. What about yourself? How did you get your start in the world of sports?
It was a long road. Actually started my career as a sports anchor in local news. So I was shooting, writing, editing all my own stuff for local TV, everywhere from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to upstate New York to down in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I actually did that for about 5 to 6 years and then wanted to get out of the business, kind of get back to my Monday through Fridays back in big cities. I'm originally from New York, so wanted to at least be back in that big city feel. So I changed field, went into public relations because everybody says, hey, journalists can go into PR. And then
Yeah.
so I moved to Chicago. And so I spent what was the next couple of years in different agencies and what I consider my master's degree in digital marketing because I always had clients with a digital strategy spin. So I've worked on organic social strategy, paid media, creator marketing. And then eventually my biggest opportunity was with Golan in Chicago, where I was helping
So
with
what I want to do is I
360.
like to slow down. I like to slow down. People like to skip over the early steps, but like for me,
Okay.
the early steps are really important. So like initially,
Yeah.
you're in that sports journalism slash content
Right.
creator slash doing everything, which is what whether you're a sports anchor,
Yeah.
you did fill in, you did some play by play. Was it something that you always wanted to get into sports? Was that your original dream to be a broadcaster or a sports broadcaster? Was that the initial dream?
That was the dream. I wanted to be an anchor on SportsCenter for ESPN. And, I got a little bit of help from a friend. Like I worked very hard in school to do that. But I had a buddy who was out at the ABC station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And he said, hey, you graduated. You're still looking for a job. Why don't you come, sleep on an air mattress in my apartment out in Sioux Falls? Come intern and maybe it'll turn into something full time. And so I worked that football season with them. I was able to build some good equity with them and I was able to go full time. So that was like my first step into it, being able to be out in the field and really learning how to do it all from every single angle. And that was at a time when news stations were really starting to struggle in terms of capturing attention for local ratings. And so what was the best next step? It was going to social media. So it was using Twitter, especially for those real time updates of sports events. It was learning to use our YouTube channel for archival content, and Instagram literally had just started. So even that was coming into the fold. So that's kind of what piqued my interest down the line once I got out of the business in terms of like social strategy, but it was very much a part of what I had to do on the TV side.
And then you talked about sort of moving to agency side and sort of learning a bit more about the digital, the marketing, the PR side of things, what brands were looking for. And I've looked over your LinkedIn. You sort of did some PR, you did some paid social. You're a senior digital manager. Was that, I guess, a good grounding because you got to see what brands wanted and what they were trying to do in the space, and like in essence, how tough it is for brands to get cut through in across social and digital.
Yeah, and it was good for me to learn how to be in a corporate environment. I mean, I needed to know what I didn't know. I had restarted to the point where, I was an intern at 27 years old when I broke back into the agency side, and I remember going to happy hours and there was people who couldn't drink. So like I was really starting from the bottom and I really understood how to communicate over email, communicate across departments, which is a big skill that I still use today. And then yes, absolutely like learning how to work with brands directly and how they break through. I've worked on everything from like the Big Ten conference and how they were using organic social media when I was in agencies. I've worked for beauty brands. I've worked in B2B trying to sell insurance covered breast pumps through paid social media. And then, of course, like brand side, got to work with McDonald's and the McDonald's All American Games, where I really got to cut my teeth in true 360 strategy at a national and global level. So it really did help me understand of like, how to be purposeful with everything that we do, why you make those decisions, and how to be so organized in the communication across not only your internal team, but with your clients and with other agencies. And I think honestly, agency life has helped me stand out on the sports side because of all those skills that you build working in agencies.
Yeah, definitely that account servicing and making sure everything is right is definitely a strength of of agency side. So as you were doing more and more of that, you sort of touched on a few sports clients, and you sort of got dragged back into the sport. Was it always a goal to, go to the majors, so to speak, and end up at a pro sport and go on the team side? Was that something that you were both looking for and building your skill sets for?
Yeah, I'd made peace with the fact that like it might never happen. And I was always looking for it. It was really great that I got to touch it again with the McDonald's All-American games. Sadly, it was during a couple COVID seasons, but still like getting me back on the sports side. But, I was one of those people, like many, I'm sure, listening to this podcast, that was following teamwork online. You apply all the time, you get rejections 6 months later, and it just finally started to crack through. I had an opportunity to go into MLS that it didn't end up where I wanted to go at the time during COVID, but the Chicago White Sox called me up. I was a local at the time being out there, and it was a great opportunity to go into an organization that was trying to evolve their digital strategy. So they had brought in guys from the Chicago Bulls because it's the same ownership to really level things up on the digital side. And their first hire was a digital partnerships manager, and that was me. They were looking for someone who was solutions oriented, who had that agency background. And so I was brought in as the first person to try and come in and drive revenue through all digital engagement. That's organic, social, paid social, email, website, app. Organize inventory, make proper valuations, and then of course communicating with both, connecting the partnerships team, the content team, and then the league as well. So that's how I was able to break back into sports, and I've tried not to leave ever since I finally got my shot.
I mean, and those roles, and we're only talking, 2021. Those roles are still being formed because we've discussed on this podcast ad nauseum. It's something that I do all the time of trying to get that, being that conduit between the commercial team, the sponsorship team, and the digital delivery, social comms. What they're doing. They're doing a great job creating all this content, engaging the fans. But how can we commercialize it? So that was at the White Sox at the time the first role, the first person that was sort of working between those.
Yeah, yeah, it was. The Chicago Bulls, they're one of the few teams in pro sports, at least in North America, that actually have this position, and they had it. They had seen the success because ultimately this is a role that its responsibilities are either bundled into a social media director's role and they don't have time for it, or it's latched onto someone on the partnerships team who doesn't understand digital. So they had seen the proven success with themselves. So they knew it was a priority when they brought it over to the White Sox, and I was the first person to hold that role there.
I mean, and it is something that is a mind shift from both sides, both the digi teams that are focused on engagement, in some cases follow accounts and how big their audiences are getting and those kind of things, but they really haven't, early on didn't have a revenue focus to begin with. It was growth, grow the platform, engage the new platforms. But you came at it, I guess, in that role to say, well, we're looking at the revenue line. We're looking at how we can commercialize the different assets. It's always a tough starting point. What was it like going in there as effectively the first person and potentially maybe mending some fences? What was some of those first steps for you? Even though you had the relationship with the Bulls and some success in that side of the business, but it still wasn't it still wasn't their business. What was those first couple of weeks like?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly the same anywhere I've been. It is tough in the beginning, and to the White Sox credit, they handled it pretty impeccably, but it's all about building trust. I mean, this is a position that if you're making people a little bit happy and a little bit upset at the same time across the organization, you're doing your job very, very well. And the key was really, how do you build trust? So I was technically part of the digital team, but I sat directly with the partnerships team, and I thought that had a lot of its advantages. Now, I had my background in content, so I was able to connect with the digital team pretty well. I understood everything, and that's really important for this role. Just like they know they have someone who can trust, who understands digital, who can bring ideas that are native to their platforms, that don't feel like ads, that are servicing our fans. And so I made sure to do that. And also on game nights, where most times if you work with the partnerships team, you're probably trying to entertain clients, making sure their activations are going right. I actually worked with the digital team, and I was helping pull highlights down from the service that we had, writing captions, compiling highlights for our YouTube game recaps. And so I was building some equity on that side while also sitting very closely with partnerships and helping make digital media approachable, not making people feel stupid for asking questions of the difference between an Instagram story and an Instagram reel, and making it very easy to understand, not just for internal stakeholders, but our clients as well. And so when the partnerships team saw that I can be of assistance on a sales call, on an activation call, and help our clients, they really bought in, leaned into it, and it unlocks more revenue and also just more of their time. They just don't have to deal with this in something they might not know necessarily.
I mean, and even something that you said, the fact that you are sitting near the partnerships team, like you can hear the deals as they're starting to form. You can hear what the sponsors are sort of wanting. And so you can sort of get in front of that to say, oh, well, they want brand awareness. This is the type of assets that work for that. And just that piece. And it's, we look for tech solutions. We're like, we need a Slack channel. Sometimes it's like the physical turning up to a meeting or being co-located near the team actually brings makes the thing work.
It's a huge difference. I mean, proximity, it does matter. It's just you're in it every day. That's where you can build those relationships. And it's just so important because I mean, where this normally goes wrong is someone with a content background is not in that one meeting or that hallway conversation, and something gets sold that makes no sense for digital, but nobody knows it at the time, and it all goes awry. And that's where these terrible relationships come from. So having someone in that proximity really helps make sure that those bad deals don't go through anymore.
So from the White Sox, you went across to Madison Square Garden in a same or similar role. How was that role same or similar or different to what you did at the White Sox?
Yeah, very similar role. It was my first time I got to go back home to New York in 15 years. So that was a bit of a coming home for me, but also I knew it was an opportunity to take the skill set that I really had built with the White Sox and level it up. It's bigger brands, it's bigger revenue, a lot more eyeballs on it. And so it was, yes, a similar role. I was kind of like a person who was brought in to handle the digital side of partnerships for the Knicks, for the Rangers, and even expanding into their entertainment portfolio with things like the Rockettes and Knicks gaming and so on and so forth. So that was really an opportunity to grow just everything that I built so far. And it really did help me. Like that is a tough place to succeed. You are really put to the test. But I think the biggest takeaway that I got from that role was learning how to develop marketing platforms, building those integrated campaigns, those bigger partnerships that are touching every single department that feel like you've created something special for each brand, something truly ownable to them. And it made me think bigger. And that was the biggest thing that it really helped me do and kind of level things up. And that's where I really felt like I had a good understanding of how far digital partnerships could go and the role that it plays within a larger organization. It's not just, hey, let's create better digital content across all the channels, but it also enhances the things that you do in venue. It enhances your overall marketing platform. So it's not just making things right, it's also just making things even bigger across the board.
It is very much that, like a lot of people look at the silos, but to get success, you've got to have that real horizontal access across everything, whether it's, like you said, what's on the Jumbotrons, got to match what's on social, what's got to matches what people walk and see in the arena, to potentially also what matches what that partner is doing back in their own stores or on their social. And if you don't connect all of those, it does look disjointed and it does look box ticking and it doesn't really connect with fans either.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the misconception is with like an in-venue activation, most social people will be like, oh, we don't want to cover that on social. No one's ever going to watch it. That can be true, but when you get a seat at the table, it very much could be the opposite. I mean, there are things like the Indiana Pacers have this concourse activation where you are tossing a hanger onto a clothing rack and they post it on TikTok and it goes crazy. Or the American Century Championship. It's a celebrity golf tournament, just happened a couple of weeks ago. And as players are heading from the 17th hole to the 18th hole, there is a basketball hoop that's branded by Travis Matthew, the apparel brand. And guys like Steph Curry are shooting on that hoop, and that's generating millions of views. So it really can be an enhancer, but you have to know about the things that are going on. So when you work in silos, that's when things go wrong. But when you know what the entire organization is doing, that's when you can come up with some creative work.
Absolutely, and you need that flexibility and the nimbleness of your teams to be able to take advantage of that. To say, yeah, like people have listening to this probably have seen Steph Curry take that shot and make that shot on that basketball ring. but you're only going to post it if he does that. Not this is prescribed. Someone's going to walk by and we're going to have a shot of someone doing it, and it's not think no. We've got the opportunity for something viral. Make sure the team knows about it. We're definitely going to run with it. It's not it's not an ad. It's just good content.
Right. It's not lucky when that happens. When you're prepared, you're more likely to just get into those scenarios. So you plan for that stuff. I mean, there's always that potential. And quite frankly, Steph Curry also missed a shot in epic fashion, and that still got millions of views. So when you got celebrities on hand, when you got the right people on hand, you just want to create these opportunities where they can interact with these branded spaces. And that is part of the formula of making them kind of reach those high view counts.
So you've obviously got a passion for sponsored content. You're obviously like looking at and looking to be inspired. And so you started SponCon Sports in 2023. Why did you start it?
Yeah, I mean, I love this space. I think I have the best job in sports. I am a content person who I don't have to be on 24/7 anymore. I'm not working those game nights and have to react to the instant news. And on the partnership side, I'm not the direct salesperson. I'm not hunting and filling a pipeline. I'm very much supporting, but that is not part of what I need to do. So I have a blend of that, and I've really leaned into that in 2023. So in January of that year, I had committed to writing on LinkedIn about it 3 times a week. That was just a personal thing. I just needed a creative outlet to share ideas. I thought there was a gap in the market. Not a lot of people doing this stuff. I just wanted to share insights and just react to things that caught my attention. So September of that year, was laid off at MSG, had some extra time, and credit goes out to Neil Horowitz, who encouraged me. He said, you're practically writing a newsletter anyway. Why don't you give it a shot? You're not working, and go with it there. And so he kept me accountable in building this up. Who was the target audience? What's it going to look like? And I built that up, launched it a month later. And now we're looking on nearly 2 years, just shy of 3,000 subscribers. And we deliver it free every single week. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. It's a lot of work. I think it's like 10 hours a week I put into that thing easily. But I really love being able to just share the insights. Rising tide kind of lifts all boats, and show some love for all the creativity there is in this industry.
Absolutely, and kudos to you for doing that, because there is very few people who are creating content and creating content that provides value. You could say, oh, but Alex, you're looking at that stuff anyway. That's your own research and you're just doing it. But yeah, right, it does take effort to do it. So yeah, kudos to that. And again, the commitment and to continue doing it. It should be is applauded, and I'll applaud it. What are some of the things that have come from that? Like, there is a strong case and of when you share your opinion on the internet, there's a lot of people that like it. There's people that don't like it. What has there been some good, I guess, repercussions and feedback from you doing it?
The feedback's been really good. I would really encourage anyone. You don't have to write a newsletter, but just sharing your opinions and getting out there in the space, it certainly helped connect me to a lot of people, and just introducing me to people globally. I mean, doing something like this show happens because I picked up a presenting sponsor in Zoomf, and they invited me out to join a panel at Seat, and I meet you at Seat, and now I'm here. It has gotten me my last two jobs. My last two jobs has been because of this newsletter. So that has really been helpful, is how I was discovered by the New York Mets to even get that opportunity. There was a long way to go after that. There was a lot of process after that, but it at least introduced me to the team on that front. But one thing I do, there's always an opportunity for backlash, but look, there's plenty of times where I could say, hey, this sponsored content is awful and please don't do this. I try to keep it positive and stick with the positives. And I certainly offer my opinions of where I think it can be improved or leveled up. But I definitely try to keep a positive spin, because there's plenty of bad stuff out there and everybody knows about that. But I'm trying to uncover the good, because there's just such a misconception when it comes to sponsored content that sponsored content sucks. And the reality is that sponsored content doesn't suck. Bad content sucks.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to teach people how to make it so that you can kind of make great sponsored content. Even if there's a brand involved, fans can still love it. And what are the keys to, having that success?
Absolutely. I mean, a couple of things from mine, like even just your origin story of starting the newsletter is, and I always encourage it. More people should be sharing what they're doing well on LinkedIn. Like, so to start with, if you're doing something well, whether it be organic content, sponsored content, something that went unexpectedly viral, something that you plan to go really catch on, you should be sharing it. Unfortunately, too many people get really active on LinkedIn when they get made redundant or when they change the thing to say, hey, I'm looking. Like, it should just be a consistent presence. Then your boss is not going, why are you doing LinkedIn? It's like, well, this is me talking about all the cool things that we're doing. And then it's only a small step to give kudos to people who are your colleagues, whether they be in the same league or a different league or someone you don't even know, to go, oh wow, like I really love what Sail GP have done, around this, this race. I'm gonna, like we both say, I say steer with pride, and you do the SponCon inspiration. Like, how can we take it for ourselves? It is a really great way to, I guess, put out your own personal brand, but also make sure both it's a really good tool internally too, that your business, people in your team know what you're doing. It's an informal way to also report back to your boss.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, it's starting and like posting online about this kind of stuff. It's important to do when you don't have to be doing it. It's the same way when you are networking. Don't reach out to people when you need something. Reach out before, establish that relationship, and then those relationships will help you down the line. So definitely do that. And then, luckily for everybody I've worked for since I've been active, and this was even at MSG when I was just writing on LinkedIn, there was no newsletter. It was encouraged. I mean, I have to be smart. Like, hey, maybe don't write about our competitors. Hey,
Yeah.
let's be careful there. But that's understandable. I think that's extremely fair. And so when I joined the Mets, I was very upfront about what I was doing. Cards were on the table, everything's above board, and they're super encouraging about it. So I think it's only been a good thing. You have to be smart with like, hey, maybe be careful about who I'm talking about in baseball, or making sure I'm not backhanded saying anything poor about our parts, but that's really easy to navigate. Like, it certainly doesn't limit me in the slightest.
And you mentioned there that we met up in real life at Seat Nashville. I wanted to ask you, what was your overall impression of Seat this year?
I thought it was really great. And I'm not just blowing smoke because I'm on your show. I've had the privilege to go to a really nice handful of conferences over the last 2 years. A lot of speakers, a lot as attendees. And I think what Seat does really, really well is really thinking through the itinerary and the planning. It is not over programmed. Like, there is enough time to go to a panel, then you get time to network, you get time to recharge the batteries, and then you can go to other panels. I think that's really important because I've been to other conferences where it's just too over programmed and you are drained by the second half of day one. I think there's that, but as a result, every panel was super purposeful, had very smart people, and I really did learn a lot and take things away. Like, I remember there was a panel after mine on the digital social track, and it was about how the Nashville Predators had tied all their heritage nights to country music, and it is something that was authentic to them, their true spin on it. I absolutely love that. I took it right back to the team when I saw that. So I felt like I learned a lot, but like, it was very well done in terms of how it's structured too.
Absolutely, I agree, and I think there was tweaks made from last year to this year to have that intention. You were on a panel with a couple of Sports Geek alumni, Patrick Cooper and Dan from Zoom, sort of focusing on game day. It was one of the things where, like, what are going to be the topics? Well, like, game day is always a topic. Like, it's not a hot topic. But it's always a topic. What are some of your, I guess, key thoughts around maximizing game day, both from fans and revenue? If we sort of look back at that panel.
Yeah, I think, maximizing game day, that's the easiest thing that you should be doing when it comes to driving revenue, because you're already creating this content, and literally every phase of game day can be monetized, and can be monetized in a very tasteful way. That is pregame, from your game day graphics to your arrivals to your starting lineups to pregame warm-ups, and then you got everything into game day where you got your in-game highlights, final scores, and then everything post-game, right? That's an exercise I like to do when I walk into a team. It starts with game day. It is, what is every single little moment we can extract? How do we start posting about it in advance? Because I like to stay away from built if sold, where it's like, we're only going to do it if we sell it. I want to maximize the inventory and get it live as soon as possible. Make sure we're telling those complete stories consistently so we can gather that data and use that data to sell. So since you're already doing it, it's low bandwidth. It really helps your content team when you prioritize selling that over your super custom content, which everybody's asking for, because you make the littlest name change to a piece on game day and it feels custom. You've got substitutions in soccer and you call it pub subs for Publix. They're iconic. They know pub subs is something out there. It connects right to the content. That feels like just a shoe in. Or player arrivals. You can tailor that to so many brands. I mean, you can do tunnel vision for a vision brand, rolling in style for a tire brand, and so on and so forth, right? If you can kind of come up with those customizations in advance and tailor it, that's like the easiest thing to activate that feels custom. And so that's the biggest priority that I like to maximize first.
It is, we love saying low hanging fruit, but it really is the low hanging fruit of
Mhm.
of commercialization, and it is just and the digital team knows which pieces are the ones that work. And one of the stuff that I love with what you're doing with writing, it's really common with me, is making sure you name things, because it's really hard to go back to the commercial team and tell them, oh, that photo that we do 10 minutes before, that's the one we want to sell. If it doesn't have a name, it's really hard for the commercial team and the sponsorship team to pitch it back. Is that also one of the things you're sort of do an assessment and say, hey, what's that called? If it hasn't got a name, we want to start giving it a name.
Yeah, it's two things. One, it makes the connection between the brand and the content. Like you put a floating logo on there, it's like, why the heck is that brand on that piece of content? Like not everybody's thinking about what that connection is, and you make it clear, that makes it even better. The other piece is actually avoiding an implied endorsement from a legal side. Like if you are making sure that a brand is positioned as you are sponsoring this series of content, and make that very clear, that's going to help you from a legal perspective as opposed to just slapping a logo on a post with a player. And it might be implied that that brand is endorsing that player. You want to stay away from that. So it helps twofold from both a legal perspective, but also really helping nail down the connection to the fans of why that brand is participating in these moments.
And from your point of view, you're now experienced and got lived experience in working between commercial and content. What are your key factors for a successful deal or a successful partnership?
Yeah, I think a successful kind of formula for any partnership, it all starts at the pitch. And if you're doing it correctly, you got to ask the right questions. What are your goals? Who's your target audience? What's your budget? What does success look like? And what have you seen in the market that you really like? What have you done in the past that you didn't like? Answers to those questions will guide what you should prepare for your partners. And all those answers to those questions, they better show up in your recaps too. That's how you tell the story over the course of a season. Make sure you resurface those answers. Make sure you document it, because when a partner says, hey, we really don't have a big enough presence, and it's like, oh, well, you wanted to prioritize content that might have been more fun that we can't do as frequently, but it has better results even though it's less frequent. So you just kind of reframe it of, are we changing priorities, are we not? So it's really asking those right questions. And then also it is building the trust internally for the partnerships and content teams to work together. So something that I like to do when I build out all the inventory that's available to the partnerships team, I make it very easy with either an Excel spreadsheet or a menu book in PowerPoint, whatever path you decide. The rule is even though the content team, which I get them to approve everything in advance, even though everything is pre-approved, when it goes in front of a partner officially, it needs to go back in front of the content team to reapprove it. And the reason is because algorithms change. Maybe you oversold in a certain window of game day. Let's say you sell a ton of pregame content and another pregame content that's approved is going in front of a partner. It's like, yeah, that's approved, but we got too much going on. We need to pivot to something else. So that builds trust of saying, like, it's not a no backsies thing where it's like, oh, you already approved it. It brings trust that it's like, we're going to get another set of eyes on it. We're letting you say it's approved. You can bring it up and you do that. So I think that's an important formula too.
Absolutely. And then as you build that trust, it does give you that flexibility and this is the bit that I think is the secret. Once the digital team starts knowing how things are working, they go, we've got something that's not on the plan that will be, that will be successful. And they then start sending that back to you to say, hey, Alex, this will really work well with our banking partner or our auto partner. It's not in our scale. You can either, do it as a nice, an add-on or an uplift for them, or potentially an upsell completely. Do you sort of get that once the light bulb moment happens for the digital teams?
Yeah, yeah. They definitely start bringing you ideas when you start to build that trust. I think the other piece is getting content teams more involved, being way more transparent, helping them understand like where's your current, digital revenue number at? Where is it that you want to go? Celebrating with them when you sell things through, closing the loop when you have a deal that might have went cold, and continuing to give those updates of where things stand. Like make them a part of the process, but also helping them understand that the revenue that we build, so like all the great content you create builds up an audience. And because of that audience, brands are interested and brands bring in the money. And with that money, you can, buy new equipment. You can outsource some things to some freelancers. You can do bigger and better things, which attracts more audience, which helps you hit your KPIs, which just continues to be a flywheel. So you have to explain them to that too. Like, even if content teams want to be selfish, like be as selfish as you want. If you want a promotion, if you want a raise, and if you want more help, doing it by working well with your partnerships team is the way you're going to get it.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that initial piece of get that foundation right, commercialize what you're doing now. But then if you've got that cool stuff, that cool stuff budget that you're like, we would love to do this, we don't have the budget for it, yourself, the partnership team are the ones that actually can bring in that cash. Whether it's, oh, we want to do this dedicated podcast series or this video series or, this particular, TikTok series, whatever it is that it's like requires more time, resources, and budget, whether it's internal or external, that's the kind of thing to say, work with us, we can help you pay for it. And so that's the bit where you start getting into the really cool stuff.
Yeah, it does. And you actually just like sparked another thing that I can't believe I forgot in terms of what is it that you need to do to have success. I think one of the biggest differences between your traditional signage, your traditional sponsorship assets, and digital is all the nuances that go within it. And one thing I encourage any team that I work with is to have every single detail mapped out up front. And it's a lot of work up front, but every idea that you're pitching should have high level description. What is the cadence? So how many times is this being posted? What channels is it going on? And what does the brand integration look like? It needs all those details. You cannot say TBD social content, to be decided anything. The second that you sell something through that is TBD, gives all the power to the brand, because now they get a say, and a much heavier say than you want. And that's when things go awry. Like, you need to call the shots. And that doesn't mean your brand can't co-create something with you, but you need to put that in writing in the beginning so that it is actually the vision that's executed that you wanted.
And that document, like, we use a one-page pitch document that has those key facts, that it's a shared document and shared language between digital and commercial. So they go, this is what that series is going to be. It's going to be on our YouTube. It's going to be cut down for TikTok. It's going to be cut down for Reels. Oh, by the way, we're also going to have some assets that are going to be given to the customer that they can use on their socials, and the IP's all signed off. Once all that's listed, and you say, oh, by the way, here's the cost. Our videographer is going to need a day a week for 6 weeks to be able to do that. Like, all of that visibility there, then you don't get that gotcha, like you said, been sold. Can you guys do it? And, oh, hang on, we're in production with something else. So it's like getting those production workflows working. But yeah, that common language is so important. And I think we are definitely moving away from, social, digital, TBD, and even the fact that you said, hey, go do it all up front. A lot of the stuff we're doing with clients is actually having upfronts like the TV networks do. Like, here's all the different series that we're going to do. Which one excites you? Take your pick, because, this one's going to go really quickly. And it definitely helps the sales process. If you say, hey, we're doing our version of this, or that kind of thing, it does help your team from a sales point of view, knowing what you actually can sell.
Yeah, it helps. It helps what you can sell, enormous help, but it also makes activation easier once the deal gets sold, and the bigger reward makes you more likely to renew the deal. You can go and sell all the partnerships you want, but you want to renew a lot of them. And so when you make that process smooth and the brands feel good about joining, being part of the family, and all that process and activating is great, and you see the results and it aligns with all your goals, like, you want the renewal. The renewal is such a big piece. So that's why in the past, when all of these tough sponsorship deals go through, your partner's just super frustrated. You're selling bad content that it's like, it may have been what they asked for, but it was never going to work. And that leads to just a tougher path to a renewal, which is what nobody wants.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about one content strand that has jumped from league to league, and that is the schedule release. Right? In the NFL, it is like their Super Bowl for the digital teams, and we've seen multiple leagues take their spin and take their inspiration of it. What's your take on, I guess, the schedule release, both from a content point of view, but then also bringing commercial partners into it?
I think it's a great opportunity for commercial partners, but it's tough. Like the NFL certainly has its advantages. The fact that you don't play every team every year, there's a limited number of games, but at the same time, while that is a hurdle, and they certainly have the advantage of like when schedule release happens, it happens in the off season. you know, Schedule release is very little about the actual schedule and just making entertaining content. So that's how I'd kind of fight that back of it is your opportunity to have fun, be creative, to let your social and content teams just like take a chance and try to break through. And it's really an earned media play. But I think where a lot of teams go wrong is they don't plan it enough in advance. I mean, the Los Angeles Chargers is who comes to mind every single year. They're planning that thing months and months in advance. Like it's not just something they're like, okay, it's finally the off season. What do we want to do for schedule release? So that really pays huge dividends. And then from a commercialization point, like one, your ticketing partner should certainly be top of mind. It's why you see Ticketmaster and SeatGeek typically as the leading sponsor in all of these windows across every league, because ultimately you are using it as a ticket driver. So that is brands you certainly want to target. And there's certainly other categories, but ticketing should be at the top. And then even if, hey, we didn't go huge on our hero video, there's still plenty of assets that you could add into that day. You can add in a predict the schedule sweepstakes to help with lead generation. You can add the schedule graphics that you have with that. They can do a takeover of your schedule page throughout the year and have integrations into that. Your email series where you're always updating, like, here's a look ahead at the games that we have. So make it not just a moment, make it a platform that you can take year round. So I think there's certainly a ton of opportunities in that front. And then I think the best teams not just are creating something entertaining in that moment, but they're finding how to pull those moments through to the regular season. So the Chicago Bulls had done this with their Pokemon schedule release. They started to use like excerpts from their schedule release into some social content previewing the matchups that were mentioned in schedule release. So I really liked that. When the Tennessee Titans, when famous for their man on the street interview on Broadway with that schedule release, they gave the Atlanta Falcons like a really wacky name. It's I'm forgetting it right now, but the Falcons leaned into that name and recreated it for like a fan fest with Napa Auto Parts the week they played the Tennessee Titans. So how can you find moments from schedule release you can take into the regular season, like how the Seattle Seahawks had these Bud Light win glasses that they would wear after every win that season, the year after they did it. It's really, how do you take it from a moment to a year-long platform is where you can really kind of have some big success and turn into a much bigger opportunity.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is because like they do come out and there is, the internet analyzes them and ranks them and all those kind of things, but it's like, well, what's the intent of it? And for the most part, it should be, I want to engage my fans. It's great if there's the internet clapping of that's an amazing video, but like I'm not, if I'm not going to a Chargers game, what's the end effect? Like you said, it's an earned media. It's an
Right.
earned media thing. So sometimes you don't know what the behind the scenes and the intentions are. Like there could be a whole bunch of in jokes that only Bills fans get and they love it. So it deepens their ties. And then, like you said, the other piece of what's the broader play, the deep watch time, then you're following it up with, but digital marketing and retargeting and hitting people up with ticket sales. It's like, it's just it's a tool. It obviously gets a lot of exposure and a lot of assessment, but it starts with, what will our fans want and love? They're the ones that watch it all the way through. But yeah, it's always it's one that, and it has been manufactured in other sports because they don't have a schedule release day like the NFL does. It does a great job of making events out of nothing because it's the NFL and it can do that. So yeah, it's always interesting to watch other sports do it, and I think when they do it for their fans first, that's where it comes, and then I really love the ideas of extending it and bringing it into other parts of the of.
Yeah, I saw something really creative with last week's NHL schedule release. The Nashville Predators actually ran a sweepstakes after the fact to win a pair, I think, of preseason tickets. And what they did was they linked to the video on the landing page, so you could go watch the hero video of the schedule release. But they asked trivia questions of
What about the
what's in
Easter
the
eggs?
video to
Yeah,
enter. So it encouraged you to go watch it, which of course helps performance and the retargeting and all that. But then, of course, fans are rewarded with a chance to win some tickets into the preseason. So I thought that was a really creative build as well. But you said something really important. It's fan first. And any kind of sponsored content, any kind of content should always be, how can I match the expectations of the audience when they hit that follow or subscribe button? It doesn't matter if there's a sponsor or not. And if you do that, you're setting yourself up for success, whether there's a brand involved or not.
absolutely. I think it was Dwayne Hankins said on this pod. He's now at the Trailblazers. That triangle of fans and sponsors and brand. It's got to tick all three. If it doesn't, the triangle falls over. And I think it's a good method for saying, hey, will this work? If you're sort of saying the sponsor loves it, it's fine for the brand, but the fans won't like it. Like that's where you go, it's not going to work. We have to tweak it in some way. Alex, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. I want to get to the Sports Geek Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Ooh, it's a tough one of which it is, but the earliest memory I have now is actually with the New York Mets. So I was a Mets fan growing up. So this job is a little bit special to me for that reason too. This was back when I was young enough. I think it was 1999 when I was picking games because it was a fireworks night. That's why I wanted to go. It was a fireworks night. And so the Mets were playing the Atlanta Braves, and we were losing big, 8-1. And it's 2 outs in the eighth inning. And the only reason we're there is because there's fireworks after
Fireworks.
at that point. And so with 2 outs, down 8-1, the Mets score 10 runs and they end up winning 11-8. And so it's still one of the best Mets games of all time. I was there. I got to do it with my dad, and then fireworks afterwards. So it was my first memory I remember, but also just a generally iconic game that I won't be able to top that much.
Absolutely, absolutely. You would have been a fair few sports events in your time. Do you have a favourite food or a go-to food at a sports event?
Yeah, I feel like this is such a bougie answer, but my go-to has been like sushi and poke bowls. And maybe I'm in the right market because Madison Square Garden has that, and now Citi Field is sushi as well. But that is kind of my go-to at a sporting event.
It does show how far stadium food and concession food has come. From the humble meat pie or the hot dog to you're having sushi at a sports event.
I
What's
will
the
say
first?
when I was
Yeah,
in
go for it.
Chicago, getting a Chicago hot dog, that might be the goat. I mean, that's the best place to get it, but that'll really change your life too.
Absolutely. What's the first app you open in the morning?
I think it's LinkedIn these days. LinkedIn, which is, look how far they've come, which is wild. I think, I was very much a part of that group on marketing Twitter, pre and early days of COVID. I think that really expanded my ability to network, and that's where I spent a lot of my time. But LinkedIn's the first one, and right behind it is TikTok. So those are the two places I'm opening right away.
Absolutely. Is there someone that you follow that gives you SponCon inspiration or otherwise that the podcast listeners should follow, and why?
Yeah. I think with sponsored content, I'll tout Liverpool as a team. I think they're doing the best in the business. They're super innovative. They've made recycling content with SC Johnson highly entertaining, but also they have a pretty high hit rate. They are incredible on YouTube. One of the few teams that are doing YouTube right, whether it's their subscription platform or their localization across languages and just the great content that they're building. So I think that they're really good. And then, I love the people that I follow in sports, but I also encourage people to go outside of sports to get inspiration as well and just like learn about digital strategy. So I think Leah Haberman's, in case you missed it, newsletter is incredible, and Rachel Carton's link in bio newsletter are just two mainstays for me that get me thinking outside of sports and overall digital strategy that I constantly find myself reading and being intrigued by.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a tendency in sports to be always looking over, at what your crosstown rival is doing, or a cross league rival is doing in market or in other markets. But you can learn just as much from the world of entertainment, festivals, what's happening in music. I mean, we've just seen we're recording this 7 days since the Coldplay, big screen, no longer a Kiss cam that's now being redone. And so, like, we're always looking for inspiration in other places.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that, and a brand I noticed out in the Philadelphia Phillies game was Evolve, right on the jumbotron for that. So they were really
No,
benefiting from
exactly. I
that
mean,
kind of a
this
moment.
weekend at the footy, they did have the Kiss cam, and the fans were doing it. And the next day in the stadium, it was just called Coldplay cam, and everyone knew. Like, and to jump on that kind of thing, to go, they're the kind of things that brands feel like they're part of this cultural trend and those kind of things. If your events team could do it, and then it's like, hey, can our social team reshare that? We saw the Phillies do it with their mascots. It's something that you can sort of catch on to. The last question I ask is a tough one, because I ask you for one social media platform that's your MVP. What is it for you? Maybe actually, I'm going to ask you, what is it for you, and then what is it for sponsored content?
I'm glad you positioned it that way. I can stick to one on both questions. YouTube, for me, I'm just super intrigued by it. Hits every single generation of fans. And there's such an opportunity with short form and long form, and even packaging it up and being able to sell your pre-roll, mid-roll, and give brands 100% share of voice around content they might not be able to get great integration into. But I find that the best inspiration on that platform comes from the creator world. And if you can kind of take those frameworks that work for them and put your team's version on it, that can be highly successful. And the Philadelphia Eagles actually do a really great job of that. So YouTube is my MVP personally. And in the sponsored content world, it is still Instagram. Instagram is still the GOAT. It's where everybody is. The advent of the collab, posts is huge and enormous, and being able to extend audiences and doing that. The fact that social media these days is reach is not determined by follower count, especially on something like Reels, where you can get reach without having those followers. I think that's enormous. And then, of course, everything from stories to carousels to Reels and all the options that you have. I consider it the courtside seats of content. It should be valued that way. So I don't encourage teams to just sell. Everybody wants Instagram, but not everybody can afford it. The same way not everybody can afford courtside seats. So you got to be careful what you're selling on there, but it is still the priority platform.
Absolutely, and I was lucky enough to speak to Andrew Yaffe, who's the CEO of Dude Perfect, as a operator that is absolutely killing it in the YouTube space. And there's definitely upside there for sports as they navigate the sports rights and what they can put up there and those kind of things. But that is definitely starting to loosen. Alex, I really appreciate you taking the time. I always ask people who listen to the podcast to reach out and say thanks. What is the best way for them to reach out to you and also subscribe to SponCon Sports?
Yeah, you find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's just my name, Alex Kopilow. So easy to find it there. And the newsletter, SponCon Sports. If you Google it, it'll be the first thing that comes up. But otherwise, it's sponconsports.beehive.com. Highly encourage it. You're getting over 10 free ideas every single week. So you're not getting charged a penny for it. You might as well take it.
Absolutely. We will put links in the show notes. Like I said, great to catch up with you in Nashville at Seat. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
And